طيب شكرا جميعا للحضور. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. فدي حتكون أول سيشن هنعملها في السيريز دي. في البداية وجدان حتعمل مقدمة صغيرة، وبعدين منتصر يبتدي المحاضرة، وبعد المحاضرة ممكن نفتح الباب للأسئلة. طيب وجدان تفضلي.
شكرا عبد الرحمن. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. نرحب بكم في أول ويبينار لجروب دعم كلية الهندسة من دفعة 87، وكل 87 ترحب بكم. يشرفنا كثير يكون معنا بروفيسور منتصر محجوب اليوم مقدم الويبينار. He's a professor in transportation infrastructure and system engineering at Virginia Tech. وإن شاء الله اليوم يكون بداية موفقة لسلسلة من الويبينارز في إطار التعاون والتبادل الخبرات والمعرفة بين كلية الهندسة ودفعات 87. مرحبا بكم.
شكرا وجدان. ففي المحاضرة اليوم عنوانها زي ما أعلنا Effective Pedagogy and E-Learning. منتصر حيشاركنا في التجربة بتاعتهم في فيرجينيا تك. منتصر ممكن تبتدي.
شكرا جزيلا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So I will talk about effective pedagogy and e-learning experience from Virginia Tech. I have divided the talk into different bullet points, including the motivation of why we want to do this kind of a webinar at this time, and then a background, and I'll talk about the Bloom's taxonomy. Some of you might have been exposed to it. Some of you might have heard of it for the first time. I'll talk then about reinforcement learning, one of the subjects that are dear to my heart because we use it in education as well as in artificial intelligence applications and different transportation areas. And then I will map Bloom's to reinforcement learning. After that, I'll talk about the teaching styles that each one of us when teaching might be using it. And then I'll talk about the learning theories, 5 different learning theories, and a recommendation of how to use them in the light of or under the situation of COVID-19 and distance learning. And then finally, the conclusions. So as a motivation, why do we want to talk about effective pedagogy with distant learning at this time? And of course, we're all aware that the COVID-19 situation, maybe in Sudan, it is not given enough light. In the US, there are 40,000 per day or 50,000 per day, and so on. So people are really focused into it. But in any situation, when we are doing distance learning for that reason or for any other reason, there are certain issues that we need to be thinking about and try to address them. The lack of in-person interaction as one of those issues. Then you kind of lose that human touch with the students, and you need something else to compensate for that. The reduction in student engagement itself, so not just the interaction with them, but also they might gradually lose interest in the engagement in the material itself, and then monitoring their course progress might be challenging. It's very easy to drop out of the wagon, as we say here. It is therefore a time for reflection and redesign of how we're doing teaching in general. So it's a good time to reflect on our own teaching styles, and some of us who are teaching might be surprised when they fill some questionnaire and figure out what kind of teacher they are. There is nothing right or wrong. It's just a matter of what method that you are following so that you are aware of it. Then there are the learning methods and the learning theories. And finally, the technology aspect of things. And all those 3 things together would interact to hopefully allow us to do effective pedagogy. And pedagogy is the art and the science of teaching itself. So let's give a little bit of a background, the Bloom's taxonomy. And Bloom is, basically said that there are 6 different levels of learning. And each one of those levels is associated with certain facts and keywords that we need to be paying attention to when we design our course. So at the very bottom level, there is a remember, allowing the students to recall facts and basic concepts. And for that, we use keywords like define and duplicate, list, memorize, repeat, state, and so on. But that's the very bottom level of learning. A level higher than that is the understanding and the ability to explain ideas or concepts. And for that, we use keywords like classify or describe, discuss, explain, and so on. And then up from that is application, the ability to use information in new situation. So think about our old classrooms when we are given examples, and then we come to the exam and we try to apply what we have learned from those examples in a new different situations. Or better yet, we are trying to train people and educate them about engineering, and then when they go to the field, they start working in new problems that might not have seen before. Then analysis comes on top of that, to draw connections among ideas, to differentiate, to organize, relate, compare, contrast, and so on. On top of that comes evaluate, to justify a stand or a decision. And for that, you have keywords like appraise, argue, defend, judge. And then on top of it all is the ability to create something new, to produce new or original work, design, assemble, construct, conjecture. So this is the end goal for us as engineers, that when you are able to design a whole building or a whole transportation system, and so on. When I mention those keywords, the reason is later on we're going to talk about the syllabus and the syllabus design. And it's very important that you have course objectives. So you have a target as a teacher you want to reach with a student. And that target is for them to be able to do something deliverable at the end. So you're using one of those keywords in your design. So let's talk about reinforcement learning. And this is probably the first learning experience you or me or anyone have passed through. It starts from being a child. So you as a child, you look in front of you, you see a cat, and you see a cup of coffee that looked to be like a hot cup of coffee. And as a child, you are curious and you want to explore things. So you go into the cup of coffee, let's say, and as a result, you touch it, you spill it, and that's not going to be a happy outcome for you. So it might, hurt you, or might just be spilled on the table, and then your parent is scolding you. And again, you're learning from that experience, from that penalty, or the general terms or reward, negative reward in this case, that this is not something that you want to do. So in your brain, you start learning and you start to try to build policies, that those policies are going to map the situation you are facing to the action that you take. So all you know now is that you see a cup of coffee, stay away from it. It's not a good thing to do. Then you see a cat, right? And you are tempted to try different things. So one idea that children love to do for some reason is to pull the cat tail. And you put the cat tail and the cat rolls around and scratches you. And again, that's not a happy outcome for you. Where if you pet the cat and it's happy, then you are happy. And you start building your policy, expanding the policy that you have in your mind at this point. No cup of coffee, no pulling the tail, but it's okay to pet the cat. So that all comes from the exploration and the rewards that you receive. And it's actually interesting as we go through the lecture that or the webinar, how learning theories are all in a way or another linked to the reinforcement learning. So comes the concept of the intelligent environment. So instead of thinking of a specific cat or a cup of coffee, think about the environment around you as a student, as a long-term learner, and that you are observing states around you, and you are tempted to take an action, or you want to take an action, and that action is going to interact with an environment around you. The environment all around you is going to respond back to you with a reward, and also it is going to produce the next state. And then meanwhile, you are thinking and contemplating and developing a policy yourself. This concept now of environment, it doesn't have to be a static environment. It could be an intelligent environment. As in matter of fact, we can argue that the environment around us is intelligent and is guiding us towards certain destiny in a way or another. Philosophically speaking, the action that you take for any state, that's your choice. But the state that is produced by the intelligent environment, that's not your choice. And if the environment is intelligent, is guiding you toward your destiny, like takhir or tasir in a sense, then that is for us as teachers, the intelligent environment is what we create as teachers to guide the student toward a certain path. No matter what those actions that they are doing, you want them to go from point A to point B to learn about how to be proficient engineers, for example, in this case. So looking at Bloom's taxonomy and the reinforcement learning ideas and the student path. So a student is facing with a certain state. The state here could be a problem that they want to solve. It could be an engineering system they want to design, a system operation that they want to improve, and so on. But they are given a certain state, and they have formed a policy that we're helping them achieve as they are studying. That policy for them is a matter of, if I am faced with that state, I'm going to do that action. And then they have the action itself, the ability to do that design, the ability to improve the operation, and so on. So recognize the state, connect the state to an action in their mind, and then do that action. If you take the Bloom's taxonomy, then it can actually be mapped pretty closely, remembering, because you're remembering the state because you have seen different states before. And then you have the connection, and that's understand. So in my mind, understanding is just a matter of, talking the talk. You realize how you can get from a certain point to another, but doing and applying is walking that walk. And a lot of time, as we know, the devil in the details. So until you come to do something, then you realize that you have missed certain things and you need to catch up on them. Now, in most of the undergraduate courses here, what we do is we focus on those three levels of the Bloom's taxonomy: remembering, understanding, and applying, and some analysis maybe. But mostly in the graduate courses is where we focus on the analysis, evaluation, and creation at the end, especially creation, when we ask students to write a research paper, for example, at the end of a course. So to be able to explain that a little bit better, I'm going to use an example from the transportation system. And in the transportation system, I usually give this slide in the first course I teach, and hit it in every other course, because it's important to bring the mind of our students to what is happening in transportation. And I divide transportation system into three different levels. The very bottom levels is where I call agents. And the agents are any entity moving in a transportation system that has the ability to make decisions, whether they are autonomous decisions or they are being based on policies and experience and things they have learned. So an agent would be a pedestrian, a passenger, walking, riding, transits, and so on. A car is an agent. A municipality or agency is an agent. Traffic controller is an agent. So in that layer, I define different agents and create different agents and so on for them to interact in the middle layer. And the middle layer is where the system is. That's basically space and time projections where these different agents are interacting together. So there is a passenger walking, they ride the car, they get out of the car, they ride the bus, they drive on the way on the road, and the road is 70 miles per hour speed because the agency set it up to be so, and the controller is turning lights green and red and yellow, and so on. And the very top, I have my goals and metrics, key performance indicators, KPIs, and I want to achieve certain goals by moving metrics from existing values to better values. I can do that through optimization of the transportation system or incentivization of different agents to do things if I cannot control them directly. And of course, there is game theory that happens in there and so on. So having that in mind, if I want to hit the analysis aspect of teaching, of learning, I would expect my student then to vary the behavior of one of those agents or more and observe what is happening at the system level. So they are analyzing the transportation system in this case. And if I want to evaluate, I will ask them to vary the behavior of the agents multiple times. So now they can observe the difference of what is happening because of their policies and be able to evaluate those differences. And then create is a little bit challenging, but that is, we do it in research more than in teaching. But in graduate classes, I ask them to do a mini project, small research project. So try to connect new nodes in the transportation system and observe the outcome of their creation in that sense. You can also look at it as, even if you are guiding them step by step to do something not new, like a class project, then they can create a report, they can create a paper, and they can create a presentation that they can discuss at the end. So that comes, there comes the creation part. So keep that in mind. Now there is a Bloom taxonomy, and that it connects to every aspect of reinforcement learning as well. And then let's visit another concept. And this is called the threshold concept. It's basically when you're teaching somebody something new, there are certain concepts that when they learn, they open the door for them to understand more about the subject itself. These are the significant concepts, the threshold. We call them threshold concepts. But sometimes the threshold concepts are really not an easy piece to grasp, and because of the student cognitive capacity. If this is a student cognitive capacity and I want to shove down a big threshold concept, they might really struggle with it. So my solution here is to break it down into smaller pieces by piece, that they can absorb the first one before they can go to the other consequent piece that they can fathom. So to be able to actually judge that before I give them the other piece, so that I'm not overwhelming them, you can do some interactive adaptive learning systems, that games, for example, that will score them and would only let them get to the next concept when they have mastered the first concept. And of course, this is a tongue-in-cheek. Have Einstein here at the end, saying that you might be able to transform a frustrated student to Einstein at the end. But the general idea is don't shove big things at the students without really breaking them in a level they can understand. So let's look now at the teaching style. And this is important because if you know how you're teaching and you know your strengths, you don't want to reinvent yourself completely. That will take a long time. But instead you can then utilize different abilities you have and adapt them to the right situation. So teaching styles, we have 5 teaching styles in general. The expert, who possesses knowledge and expertise that the students need, who is concerned that the students receive the correct information and are well prepared in the discipline, very knowledgeable in the field at hand, but it also, there is a problem that this can be intimidating to many students. So the connection between the expert and the students need to be really thought about very well. not to intimidate them. The next one is the formal authority. And we all might have, dealt with that kind of many times. But basically, the professor who gains his or her status and respect because of his or her position as a faculty member, concerned with the correct way of doing things according to relevant standard. So this teacher is very tough in a sense, and this style can lead to rigid, standardized, and inflexible teaching in a way. And then you have the personal model, the paragon, right? Concerned that he or she establishes a prototype on how to behave and think, will show students how to do things rather than simply tell them. And students may feel inadequate if they cannot emulate and live up to the standard. Just reflecting on my own teaching, when I read that, and I think I'm doing that more with my graduate students, my PhD and master's students, rather than the classroom with the undergrad. The facilitator, the guides and directs the student by using various methodologies, aims to develop the student's ability to independent thought and action. So it's a school of thought, right? Like you want the students not to just get an A because they did everything you asked them to do, but you want them to be able to be independent thinkers and independent engineers at the end, because you're not going to be there with them when they are faced with those challenges. But this can be time consuming, because basically you are creating the environment. You want them to come and utilize the environment to be the best that they can be, but you are spending a lot of time with them. Finally, the delegator, and that person concerns him or herself in the student's ability to function in an autonomous manner. And then he assigns various tasks to complete and function as a resource rather than a knowledge source. And students might be uncomfortable with this autonomy and may feel lost. So my personal, feel into this is that the delegator would work if you have, if you are supervising a PhD student. Of course, you want them to be autonomous at the end. But for undergrad, it can be very overwhelming. So what kind of a teacher are you? Might be asking yourself that question. And there is a paper by Gracia in 1996 and many other follow-up on that paper, including a style survey that you can take a lot of questions, you answer those questions, and at the end it tells you in scale from 1 to 5 how close are you to being the expert or the formal authority or the personal model, and so on. So if you're wondering, these are my scores. When I took that survey, and I was surprised because I did not know I was a formal authority in a way. That's not what I tried to reflect. Wasn't surprised about the expert delegator as I, thinking of it. Yes, this is with the graduate students more than undergrad and so on. All right. So why do we concern ourselves with knowing what teacher you are? Thinking about it, if you know where your strengths points are, this is where you can capitalize your investment when you are developing your course. And also, if you know that the kind of a course you are teaching is going to require a lot of facilitation and you're not a facilitator, then that's something that you can work on and make sure that the course includes those aspects. I'm going to put this one here. All right, now let's talk about the learning theories and the applications. There are 5 theories, and the cognitive load theory. There is a behaviorism learning theory, the constructivism theory, humanism, and social cognitive theory. And I'll speak about each one of those in the next slides. So this is actually a very interesting thing to think about, the cognitive load theory and how our mind works. How do we remember things, and how do we link new knowledge to knowledge that we already have? And basically, the human mind, as you can see here in the figure, whenever you are receiving new incoming information, you have your sensory memory being activated at this time. Think about it. If you are looking, there are terabytes of information that are coming at you visually. Your brain doesn't capture all of them. Your brain captures only few significant things: a danger coming at you, a person you recognize, and so on. By design, it forgets a lot of the sensory memory that comes at you. But then when that piece of information reaches your working memory, link what you are receiving now with the existing knowledge that you have. You want to be able to encode new information into your long-term memory. And if some of this information is related to something you know already, you are retrieving from your long-term memory so that you can compare and you can organize. So the working memory itself, some people say, or some research say, it's about 7 items that you can handle at a time. Some of us can handle more or less. So it's limited memory. This is not your long-term memory. It's limited memory, like the RAM in the computer. And in it, there are certain loads, the cognitive loads that you are dealing with. There is an intrinsic cognitive load, and this has to do with the matter of information or the difficulty of information that you're dealing with. So an example would be if you are trying to think about calculus as opposed to, and try to understand the relationship between two events in history. Calculus has a lot of more intrinsic load associated with it. The extraneous load is things that you shouldn't have seen. Things like if I'm giving you a presentation and I put my PowerPoint in a bad way, very badly designed, where you need to look at something while I'm speaking about something else and things like that. There are some extraneous information. You're trying to get rid of it so that you can understand what is going on. And then there is a germane load. The germane load has to do with the actual processing of the knowledge that you are receiving and linking it to what you already know. So if I give you a new piece of information, if you're not familiar with, let's say, the concept I'm talking about now, the cognitive load theory, and I'm describing the working memory, you're trying to map that into what you know about what you have been experiencing yourself, the way that you remember things, and the way that when people flood you with information and how you are trying to extract the piece of knowledge you want. That in itself is kind of the germane load that I'm talking about. You're retrieving what you know, you're encoding new information into your long-term memory. The long-term memory itself is divided into 3 different memories. And I know this is a lot of memory stuff, it's hard to memorize memory stuff, but it's important to know, what is going on in your own mind. So in the long-term memory, you have episodic memory. These are the things you have done yourself and you have learned from doing. And then you have semantic memory, and these are the things you know. These are facts. You could know them by observation. You don't have to do it yourself. You know that when you've seen the cat crossing the road and got hit by a car, you know that running in front of the car is a bad thing. You were not the cat who ran away and you were not hit. Luckily you're alive. So you haven't experienced that yourself, but you have observed it, or somebody else observed it and showed it to you. It goes into your semantic memory. And then procedural memory are things that we do subconsciously, the way you walk, the way you even breathe, the way you ride a bike or drive your car, and then you're not thinking of it anymore. You're doing it internally. So luckily, if we can teach students things and to the level where it goes to their procedural memory, then that's really the ultimate thing. But at the very least, we are targeting the episodic memory and the semantic memory also through reading about examples and learning from their colleagues and so on. So cognitive load theory and distance learning, what are my suggestions here to do with that? Break down intrinsic load. Remember the threshold concepts. So don't give big huge topics to the students and expect them to understand them right away. It might be easier for you as a teacher, but it might be very difficult for them as students seeing it for the first time. So break them into different small pieces in a logical manner. Link to the previous topics and concept so that the germane part of that working memory, make it easy for it to be able to link to the previous knowledge. And then remove any extraneous information that you don't need to have in there. So for me, when I record a lecture, I record it in a studio-like environment and software, so I can delete and take out all the noise information and things like that, so students are focused with what they are dealing with. Then the Behaviorism Learning Theory, BLT. It focuses on how educators can provide an environment that encourages good behavior. So this is really very much linked to the reinforcement learning idea, but focuses on the environment. How do you make that environment encouraging for the students? So again, students do actions, they receive reward from the environment, and the intelligence you build in that environment is supporting that behaviorism learning theory. So in a distance learning environment, what I would suggest is that you need to utilize learning management systems to provide an adaptive environment for the students. In Sudan, they use Moodle. In here, we're using Canvas, but it's the same thing. Just adapt that system to give a good environment. Develop quizzes, and especially quizzes that can be interactive and tell the student if they are wrong, and then guide them towards the right answer, or wait for them to give the right answer so they get the aha moment. And utilize discussion boards, very important. The discussion board, you can encourage the good behavior. So students who are answering other students who are starting to learn new things, you give them encouraging remarks so that they can keep going up. I still remember the good remarks that we received during our undergraduate studies, believe it or not, and it can go the other way. Some of us remember the bad remarks, or I remember some of those bad remarks as well. So it's very important. It's not something trivial. It's important to focus on. And of course, the technology is going to provide a way for you to build those quizzes and discussion boards and things of that sort. Then the constructivism theory focuses on how students learn by building on previous knowledge to and from their own perspective. So it is all about that episodic piece of memory inside their long term. Students learn. As they are learning, they are building a whole world inside of their mind. That world, we want it to be as close as possible to reality. And you might be, sometimes surprised when you see students build a whole world that is kind of a parallel world. They have their own understanding of things, and it works. They have their own different perspective, like that famous picture over here. Depending on your perspective and where you are looking, is this a T or an H or an M? It depends on what your perspective is, and they are all correct. But we want to make sure that, again, they are building a real world in their mind to understand the real world we have. In distant learning and technology infused environment, link the new knowledge to course syllabus in videos so that they know where does this piece of information you're giving them fit? Why are we going? Why are we studying what we are studying? What are we doing with it? Utilize the system modeling and simulation to connect topics if possible, because then they can see from point A to point B all the way through. So far, they have learned this much, and they can apply it. And then again, utilize discussion board, because if people are building different worlds, they can come into consensus or comparison when they have a discussion. The humanism theory, on the other hand, it might be more applicable to psychology and those other fields, but we can take from it what applies to us. Humanism, basically, that theory says, focuses on the growth and self-actualization, meaning that it posits that every human is different and you are growing into who you are, the unique self at the end. So we can link it, though, to different learning paths and the need for multimodal delivery. Because if I'm dealing with different students and they are all excellent in their own way, an A student doesn't have to look exactly like what I have in mind for an A student. There are different models and different unique selves that they are building themselves into. And each one of them can contribute in a different way anyway. So the need for multimodal delivery then to encourage students to be who they are, to excel in their own way. So in distant learning, the theory is a proponent for group projects and reports in the learning management system. So when I ask somebody to write their own report at the end to come up with a new idea, I should be encouraging that. Finally, the social cognitive theory, and that's my favorite personally, and its focus is on learning by observation. And it's important because it combines elements of the cognitive load theory and the behaviorism learning theory. So again, related to reinforcement learning, but you add to it the ability to observe. You are observing also what others are doing, and you are learning from them as well. This is a very nice picture, by the way, on the left over here for students. So now let's put all of this together in a learning system. Reinforcement learning and how we have an environment, and this time we call it teaching environment. And then we have a student. I just removed all the rewards and state and action and things like that. And I am putting them on the two different sides. And then I'm going to replace them. So the teaching environment, you have a professor who is dealing with technology. And on the other hand, you have students who are at the receiving end, but they could be providing feedback. Then you have the Bloom taxonomy in the middle, because when you teach, you want to touch all the different aspects of Bloom taxonomy. And then you have a syllabus, which is really something very important. And if we take one thing out today as a first step, it would be we want to make sure that all our teachers have syllabus that is very clear. I'll give an example for that. Then you have technology that embodies all of this, so the interaction can be happening between the professor and the students and applying those different theories. So I mentioned syllabus, and this is an example from one of the courses that I'm teaching, the computer applications for civil engineering students. And it's simple contract, the way you need to think about it. It's just a simple contract between the faculty and the students, that they know exactly what is going on, how they are going to be graded, what is covered in the course, what is not covered, how, what kind of grades they will get, and based on, what points and so on. All of that is here. So the course description, the prerequisites, there is no prerequisite for this particular class, but some of them do. The course goals, the course objectives. This is key. This is very, very important. Students are taking this course because at the completion of this course, they should be able to, and you have to list to them what you expect them at the end of the course to do. And then, what kind of materials, multimedia materials they are providing and how their grades assigned to it, and so on, basically. The important part also I wanted to highlight is the course learning objective. With the lesson learning objective and how there should be clear mapping. So the lesson topic name, one of the lecture would be like VBA programming basics, for example. And then I have lesson level objectives. So I want them to be able to achieve, remember the keywords associated with the Bloom's taxonomy. And each one of them is measurable, and I'm listing them here. At the end of this lecture, they will be able to achieve the following: write input and output statements, write if statements, write correct while statement, and so on. And I'm linking all of those lessons objective to the course level objective. So one of the course level objective was develop effective and functional computer programs. So they know they are not taking these lessons for the just, without knowing why. They are here because they want to achieve that course lesson level objective, and they are achieving it by doing the lesson level objectives. And then I'm giving them also what kind of material and technology required for it. And another example for the rubrics, remember we talked about the creation level in Bloom's taxonomy. And if I'm asking students to write a paper, I'm giving them a paper grading rubric so that they know what kind of grade they will receive if they deviate or if they meet each of the requirements. When they present, well organized, up to 3 points, 15 minutes long, 2 points. Some students come in and give a presentation that goes for like 20 minutes. I have to stop them and they lose points already. So in a behaviorism learning theory way, that teaches them in the future to be very accurate in their time and so on. The substance, what the question is, the question that they are studying, is it clear and worthy? The coverage, is it reasonable? The methodology makes sense. It is intellectually stimulant. Conclusions are logical. Each one of those has points, they are adding up. So that's why hardworking students and who spend time learning, they can achieve the full mark because they know exactly what they need to do. And then finally, this is the last slide before the conclusion one, example of the tools and the technologies that I'm using. So on the very top left here, this is the Canvas website for one of my courses, Traffic Signal System Operation and Control. And you will see in it, like an introduction to the course objectives listed right there, quick links, and then down, I didn't cut the whole screen, but down there you'll see the different lessons, and then they can go in each one. And then when I give them assignment, it goes to their to-do list, and they know exactly when they are supposed to do them and their deadlines and so on. Over here, this is a small snippet from a course I'm teaching, but I'll show you that when I recorded the course and I have software used in the course, I'm showing them exactly how to deal with it. Very quickly for you, so with the links. This is going down. So, basically showing them by example, and the video is recorded, so they go back and they can follow themselves also by example, and until they get it right. Quizzes that are associated with every module. So they have the question, they have multiple choice, but it also gives them the chance to go back and to resolve them if they need to. And discussion forum. And students come in and they write questions. They ask questions, I'll go in and reply to their questions. But this way also other students see what is happening and they can learn from the frequently asked questions, if you will. And then finally, a snapshot here from one of the games we developed over the years to teach students in an interactive way. They're dealing with the traffic. Here is a simulation. They try to end the green at the appropriate time for safety purposes. And whether they achieve that or not, they get a score and they can play again until they actually reach so now, like they caught one car. The red car means it was caught in safety compromise situation. But this is an adaptive way also to learn with the students. You don't have to go to that level of developing games like this. Those games could be as simple as in a spreadsheet or in any other form. Even the quizzes or the discussion forum questions could be in form of games, and who's gonna give the right answer first and all that. So as a conclusion, this is our first webinar on effective pedagogy and distance learning. So the purpose of it was to lay the groundwork, the foundation, so that we can build on that on future webinars, and maybe we have the discussion panel at some point as well, including students. So we discussed teaching styles, learning theories, and the use of technology in distant learning. We discussed suggested strategies to improve learning in a distance learning environment. And we also discussed the importance of creating a clear syllabus and course level objectives. So with that, I thank you for your time. Just as a reminder, please register. I'm gonna put that in the chat, that link in the chat directly. So please go in there and fill in the registration link. This way we have your information and we can share information with you when we have the follow-up seminar webinars. It is on the chat window now, the registration link. So if you click on it, it just gives you your a place to write your name, your email, if you want your WhatsApp number. There is a place for you to make any comments, any suggestions, any things you would like to see us covering in the future. And with that, I'll open the door for questions. Abdurrahman, goes back to you.
شكرا منتصر. في الحقيقة أنا ما توقعت إنه تكون حاجة مفيدة بالمستوى ده بالنسبة لي أنا شخصيا. أنا يعني افتكرت إنها بتكون أكثر relevant للأكاديميكس، لكن في حاجات كتير جدا هنا ممكن تكون applicable لناس كتار. الحاجة اللي كنت عايز أقول إنه السيشنز دي ما لازم تكون فورمال، يعني نحن الناس الحاضرين كلهم من الدفعة، فهي برضو مناسبة كويسة للناس to socialize يعني around something useful. فممكن الناس لو حبوا يتكلموا عن أي موضوع برضو فرصة كويسة. يعني ما عندنا أسئلة مكتوبة، وإذا في حد عايز يتكلم
في سؤال يا عبد الرحمن في الشات بوكس، في سؤال يا عبد الرحمن
من محمد مصطفى.
أيوة.
Yeah, Muhammad Mustafa, from your perspective and experience, which type more useful, the synchronous or asynchronous learning for both students and lecturer? I will say asynchronous. I am using asynchronous now after the COVID-19. And the reason is with asynchronous, the videos are already there. And especially, with the asynchronous teaching, I record my videos and process them and make sure that they are in a good format for quick learning and so on. If you do it synchronously, then you're just recording the video as it happens. But asynchronously, you can design it, you can put more thoughts into it, and then students can take all the time they need to capture what they want to learn. They can go back, rewind. If they miss something, they can ask you. And then, of course, it's important to augment that with a discussion forum so that they can ask you questions, then you can answer them.
May I please, Adil here?
Sure. Adil.
Right, Montasir, thank you very much. Very informative. I really enjoyed, although I joined 15 minutes later. I want to relate, to what you talked about transportation and teaching. The model that you presented at the beginning, I don't know if that was the beginning, the agents, the system, and you call it what? Goals or activities. I'm guessing this is built on social theories, such as structuration, the structuration theory and the structuring theory. And these kind of theories also can apply in learning and teaching. Because now teaching online, the social system or the social structure is totally different. And also the agents involved in the process, whether they're the teachers or the students. In normal setting, we understand, we can quickly adapt with the social structure because we meet the people, we talk to the people, and there are other senses that we can use other than just listening or even seeing someone in video. So what is your advice to overcome this obstacles of the duality between the social structure and agents?
So if I understand it correctly, so to me, agents, dealing with anything as an agent is an opportunity to build that intellectual ability inside the agent itself, like encapsulating the behavior and the intellect inside the agent, right? And then when you are dealing with multi-agent system, there comes a need to either cluster them in different categories. So you have then a social system, like you say, with different characteristics and different intellectual models and things of that sort. And the challenge is how you deliver your teaching to all of them in a way that is going to benefit all of them. The way that I have dealt with it is basically try to do as much multimodal delivery as possible, meaning that I'm not focused on a certain only one way of delivery. I'm focusing on multi methods of delivery. Yeah, so it can address each individual needs and different social structure in that sense. The discussion forums are very important in that sense because it allows for an interaction within that social system, and it allows you as a teacher to understand more about what is going on in the system, in that social structure you're dealing with as well. And it breaks barriers between different groups. It's very interesting, actually, in a way, when you see how brainstorming sessions and can lead to different triggering points in our thoughts and feelings, so that we can create something new. And it's not a secret. That's why we actually like to have this kind of groups and discussions, and so that we can have that going on among the Dufa also.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Adil. Any other discussion point? Doesn't have to be formal. Like
في سؤال ثاني في الشات يا منتصر.
منو؟
ما ظاهر لي الاسم مكتوب بس ايفون.
Okay. Yeah. Do you please get feedbacks from learners so that you can design a continuous improvement tool to the learning environment? Yes, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned this, because I was thinking yesterday on the course I'm teaching now, that the first time I taught the course in a distance learning environment, it is, it meets a requirement, but they are the bare minimum. It's very time consuming process. But the lucky students are the next batch who takes the course, because I've already got feedback from the previous learners, and I've already used those to improve the course for them. So yes, we can actually keep continuously improving our courses. If we draw it as a figure, I would say, I'm tempted to do that now. Let me annotate my screen here. If we just draw a simple time on the x-axis and the amount of effort on the y-axis, and it is, huge in the beginning and then immediately goes down like that. So the first time you're teaching the course, you have huge effort to actually develop all of those materials. The second time, you're only updating them. And by the third time you're teaching, if you have invested all the resources, you have a perfect course that is ready for, you can even do a MOOC, the massive online teaching courses. So maybe you take it to Coursera or edX or any other platform like that. So it is a worthy investment, and the students will benefit from it. And it's very good to get the learner feedback. We call that the formative assessment, right? So the assessment of the course in a way that allow you to improve it, rather than the summative assessment, which is just giving you a grade of was your course good or not. So thank you for the question. That was a really good question.
منتصر, the question was from Tahra. بس أضاف السؤال ثاني, قالت and do have a sort of happiness scale after learner's experience.
Happiness scale for the students, you mean, or for me? I feel happy after that.
Yeah, we feel happy too. It's just for the students what I mean. You know, like a sort of kind of how satisfied they are, either with the material or with the way it has been delivered, so that it can be recorded and as a sort of lessons learned. So then in the future you can always refer to it and then move from that point and increase or change on the modules or add or adapt them to the need. That's what I meant.
Okay. Yes, we do. And we actually, the way that the American universities work, we have what is called the SPOT survey, student perception of learning or of teaching survey. So every course, at the end of it, the students fill out the survey, and there are multiple questions with multiple, strongly agree, disagree, and so on each aspect, targeting the course, the teacher, and so on. And they have place for free comments that they write in there. And we use those, you as a teacher get those results after the course is over, so that it doesn't affect the student grades. In a way, it protects the student. But of course, it is intended for you to reflect on them and to improve the course for the next time you teach it. And those surveys even, feed into the annual evaluation and the promotion and tenure decisions. So when you're going for associate professor or from associate to full professor, then, we are looking at all of those SPOT surveys in addition to everything else you have been doing. So they are important, yeah. I used to do my own survey in addition to that in the middle of the course, and I designed it differently because it's not intended as a summative assessment, but more as a formative assessment. And it is targeting more question like, what do you want me to do better to improve your learning experience? What did you like? What did you not like? But it's more challenging now with all the COVID-19 load and time and things we need to do. But those are very useful, yes. Tahani, I saw you raising your hand.
شكرا جزيلا. السلام عليكم بروف منتصر.
عليكم السلام.
وشكرا يعني على أول ويبينار، يعني إن شاء الله تكون متواصلة ومستمرة. طبعا الموضوع اليوم بيهمنا أكثر كأساتذة وكده، ومع اختلاف الميديا نقول أو الوسط في التدريس في أمريكا والسودان، لكن يعني ممكن الناس تقول أنا ما أقدر أقول نحن expert styles هنا في جامعة الخرطوم، لكن كل الشغل أو المجهود اللي بيتعمل في الغالب بيكون هو بالخبرة أكتر. في instructions في syllabus زي ما أنت قلت، في ما أظن عندنا rubrics زي حقتكم كده دقيقة، لكن معروف من بداية السمستر أنت بتوضح للطلاب الكورس وهيك بيحتوي على شنو، مكوناته، فيه لابوراتوري، فيه توتوريالز، فيه كويزز whatever، يعني التجميع بتاعه عشان يديك مثلا 30%، وبعدين الامتحان ممكن الفاينل اكزام يكون 70% حسب طبعا الكريدت اورز وكده. وبعد ذاك او بتملك الطالب برضه الانتندد ليرنينج اوتكمز، لكن القصه هي معقده اكثر من انها هي فقط نحن بنكتبها. هسه في بدايه انا في اي مقرر في بدايته بكتب ILOs كده by after completion this course كده the students will be able to do 1 2 3 4 5. لكن زي ما انت هسه بتتكلم على الاسسمنت، كيف انا اقدر اقول والله نمره 1 من ILOs دي خلاص done والطلاب عرفوها وكده، نمبر 2 كذا. يعني انت بتجي بتتفاجأ مثلا في الامتحان، وانا يعني السنه الامتحانات الاخيره دي مثلا في اختلاف كبير لانه قسمت السنه بالكوفيد 19 وكده. الطلاب ممكن تكون انت حاسس انك انت بذلت مجهود معاهم وجيت في الامتحانات لقيت في حاجات هم ما تابعوها، او هم ممكن يكونوا اهملوا، او الظروف اللي مرت بها السنه الدراسيه وكده. الفورماتيف والسماتيف assessment methods، يعني في بس وريني الاختلاف الواضح ما بينهم، لانه انت عايز تعرف مثلا فيدباك من الطلاب اثناء السنه او السمستر، يعني عشان تقيم الطلاب، ولا هم الطلاب عشان يقيموا نفسهم في انهم هل هم فاهمين ولا لسه ما فهموا الكورس زي نيد مور، يعني عشان يفهموا المقرر وكده. مش تجي تتفاجأ في نهايه الامتحان نهايه السنه وتقول والله انا ما قدرت اقيم الطلاب، او ربما الطلاب ديل ما اخذوا الجرعه الكافيه او ما اخذوا التمارين الكافيه وكده. ففي يعني حتتين، بالاضافه لانه زي ما قلت لك قبل، يعني نحن نتكلم على منهج بتاع جامعه او كليه مثلا محدده، وانت يو هاف تو فولو في نفس الوقت الطريقه بتاعه التدريس، واللي هي يعني هسه نحن الان شغالين جزء اونلاين وجزء فيس تو فيس، والحكايه حتى الاسسمنت حتى الان نحن بالنسبه لنا ما واضح انه انت حتعمل الاسسمنت كيف. انا لحد هسه ما شفت ولا طالب شغاله معاهم اونلاين مخلينهم للمساعد التدريس عشان يشتغلوا معاهم تمارين وكده. انت ما شايف الطلاب، ما بتقدر تقتنع انهم هم زي فولو يو بنفس الطريقه اللي هم معاك في الكلاس وكده. ربما يحضروا في محاضره 80 والمحاضره اللي بعديها يجوني 30 يقول لك لا ما خلاص نحن بنحضر التسجيل. فانت قبل علقت تعليق على سينكرونس ولا اسينكرونس، معلش يعني اسئله متشعبه لكن بتدينا تلخيص شويه عن الحكايه. شكرا.
العفو، دي أسئلة جميلة جدا يا دكتورة. خليني أبدأ لك. طب من البداية احنا يعني كيف بننظم الكورس اوبجيكتيف والليرنينج اوبجيكتيف وكده. عندنا احنا الكورس اوبجيكتيفز دي ثابتة ما بنقدر نغيرها. بيكونوا مثلا 5 6 7 كورس اوبجيكتيفز اللي هم بيوصفوا الكورس نفسه. ما بنقدر نغيرها ليه؟ لأنها داخلة في الإيبت requirement والإيبت certification وكده. ممكن تتغير يعني هي، لكن تغييرها صعب جدا وبيتطلب معاملة مع الإيبت والكلام ده كله. فعشان كده دائما بنحاول ما نغيرها. فدي ثابتة. أنا لما أجي أدرس كورس، لو جيت أدرس كورس جديد بيدوني الكورس اوبجكتيفز الجايه من الفورمال اللي سلموه للإيبت دي اصلا وما حتتغير. دي بيدوني ليها از ان انبوت، بقوم انا باخدها. ولو عاوز ريلي انظم الكورس بطريقه يعني جيده او افكتيف، بمسك كل واحد من الكورس اوبجكتيفز ديل براهم وبعمل له مابينج للليسونز والليسونز اوبجكتيف. فبقول انه الكورس اوبجكتيف الاول ده هقدر ادرسه في كم ليكشر، what are the lesson objective associated معاه، بحيث انه فعلا at the end يعني I met it يعني I'm sure انه I met it. بعد ما اخدت الليسونز اوبجكتيف بقوم بحضر الليسون ذاته، بحيث انه اخدت الماتيريال اللي حدرسها لهم وكيف حسجلها فيديوز، والاسسمنت اللي معاها immediately عشان البوينت اللي انت رفعتيها دي. الاسسمنت اللي بتخليني اكون واثق انه الطلبه are meeting the lesson objectives. فاي lesson objective بيخش في الديزاين حقي بتاع what homework, what quiz, and what I want to get back from the student. فبخش في الروبريك بتاع الجريدنج ذاته. فعشان كده الديزاين بتاع الكورس يعني عملية صعبة شوية، أو هي مش صعبة، هي time consuming. بتتطلب يعني تحضير وتجهيز وديزاين وكده، وبعد ذاك كرييشن للمالتي ميديا اللي بتعمليها في الكورس. بالنسبة للديفرنس برضو، واحد من الميجر ديفرنس من أيام الخرطوم وهنا، إحنا we have it flipped around. we have الكورس 70% والفاينل exam 30%، not the other way around. والريزون في المسألة دي إنه شنو يعني الشغل بتاع الطالب كله يكون مركز معظمه أثناء أعمال السنة، عشان نتأكد إنه نكون متأكدين أثناء أعمال السنة وما نفاجأ في النهاية بالطالب يجي للامتحان أبو 70% ويطلع ما عارف أي حاجة وإنه ده كيف حصل وكده. if they met all the requirements أثناء السنة دي at least 70 points out of the 100، وبعد ذاك الباقي بيجي في الإكزام. بالنسبة للفورماتيف وسماتيف assessment، الديفرنس in a light sense زي الزول لما يكون بيقولوا لك هم هنا يعني بيشرحها لنا كده، إنه لما تكون بتطبخ وتقوم تذوق من الطبيخ أثناء ما أنت بتطبخ، دي formative assessment. الهدف منها ما إنك تعرف يعني الحاجة اللي قدامك دي كويسة أو لا، as much as إنه تعرف تصلحها كيف، more than judging it how to fix it. فأنت بتاخد منها، بتذوق منها عشان تقول والله دي ناقصة ملح، لازم أخد لها ملح حسي عشان بعدين تطلع كويسة. it is a process of you know, maybe the quizzes that you give in every lecture and monitoring how many of the students got the point, so that next lecture you address the points اللي انت حاسس انه الستودنتس عندهم مشكله معاها. فبالطريقه دي انت ما بتكون separated من الليرنينج بتاع الستودنتس، لكن بتكون ماشي معاهم ستيب باي ستيب كل مره. في بعض التولز بالذات كنا بنستخدمها زمان قبل الكوفيد 19 في الاونلاين ميتينجز. They are available in, you know, like mobile apps and computer برضو ممكن computer screen أو الكليكرز they're hardware. اللي هو basically أنا بكون عندي الباوربوينت قدامي، بتكون التول connected، كل student can press مثلا A, B, C, D or E، مثلا 5 letters in front of them in their device or laptop or mobile device، وبتوريني أنا in real time histogram في كم زول pressed A، في كم زول pressed B, C, D and E. فأنا أثناء ما بشرح مثلا بقول لهم okay so how clear is this to everyone. السكيل اللي هو A يعني خلاص 100% clear، السكيل to E إنه ما فاهمين أي حاجة. I see الهيستوجرام قدامي directly immediately and I see like most of them are already A's and B's and I move on. If I see, and sometimes I'm surprised but it happens, you know, most of them don't understand it at all, then I'm not moving forward. That's a formative assessment of what I've just done. I'm not moving forward, I'm staying more and I'm explaining, and then I might open the door for questions and respond to those individual questions لحد ما أشوف الهيستوجرام ده بيتحرك قدامي كده للA's and B's، بعد ده I move forward. دي formative. الsummative assessment هي at the end اللي هي اللي بنعملها إحنا كلنا حاسدي، يعني بعد ما خلاص هم يمتحنوا ونعمل لهم grading و that's what they receive, that's what they deserve يعني بعد الإكزامز وكده. في حاجة فطيتها ولا تهاني؟ في حتة I missed it؟
لا كده تمام الإجابات، لكن بس ملاحظة في الأناليسيس اللي أنت بتعملها بالموبايل أبس وكده، ممكن تعملها إذا كان أعداد الطلاب طبعا بسيطة، لكن لما تكون أعداد الطلاب أفتكر كثيرة ولا كده، ولا أنت بتشيل بس
هي أوتوماتيك
يعني؟
لا هي أوتوماتيك يا تهاني، هي it looks like this في النهاية. يعني أنا كنت زمان بعملها بالكليكرز ده الديفايسز الطالب كان بيشتريه وأنا عندي receiving station بيرسلوها لي ناس الشركة ذاتهم، بتكون قاعدة موصلة بالكمبيوتر قدامي. at any point in time أنا بس بتجيني histograms like this. كويس، يعني الهيستوجرام ديل مثلا
هو زي فوتينج يعني
زي فوتينج exactly it's a voting system. الناس اللي فوتوا A voted B voted C D and E. فالفوتس دي حتى لو العدد كبير it doesn't matter، يعني ممكن ديل يكونوا مثلا 100 و200 whatever. فبالعكس لما العدد يكبر معناته السامبلينج يعني more robust in a way، فبديني more confidence. أنا لو لقيت حاجة زي دي مثلا that's a normally distributed kind of a way، still بقوم بديم كم سؤال تاني وكم توضيح تاني عشان at the end أنا I don't want to see this، يعني ما داري أي زول يكون بيصوت C ولا D ولا E. لو بقى لي تصويت معظمه A's and B's like this I'll be very happy إنه خلاص ده اللي فيه مدرس let's move on to the next one. بالنسبة للdistant learning طبعا صعبة لأنهم أنت متقابليهم، لكن ممكن تتعامل at the end of the lecture ويبقى الليكشر في نفسه أو الفيديو في نفسه a way for you to address whatever is being missed in the next video. مرات actually I did it last semester. كنت بدرسهم introduction to transportation، وواحدة من السبجكت هي traffic signal. دائما الترافيك signal دي for some reason بتكون معقدة بالنسبة لهم، فلما الفيدباك كتر انهم ما فاهمين، فقمت سجلت اديشنال فيديو باكزامبل ستيب باي ستيب كده قدامهم وانا بعمل في الحاجه، وخدته لهم از ان اديشنال ريسورس. فبعد ده هم فهموا يعني.
طيب منتظر، عندنا عدد من الأسئلة لسه منتظر
جدا جدا.
ففي سؤالين من محمد مصطفى. لو ممكن محمد السؤال الأول توضحه شوية لأنه ما قدرت أفهم. اتكلمت عن الخصوصية والسرية.
أيوة. أوكي يا محمد، الخصوصية والسرية، اختراق المحتويات والاختبارات الإلكترونية. Very good question. عشان كده احنا بنستخدم learning management system، ما بنعمل our own website حتى ولو انه يعني ممكن نعملها، لكن عشان الخوف من الاختراق المحتويات ده بنستخدم الكانفاس فور اكزامبل. هنا في موديل ده نظر learning management system. فالناس بيكونوا يعني بتكون either a company ولا big community open source community عملت development ل a whole management system بحيث انه يكون secure، يكون ما فيه اختراقات، بحيث انه احنا الفوكس حقنا يكون في انه كيف نخط الماتيريال من غير ما نخاف على الخصوصيه بتاعت الطلبه او كده.
طيب عندنا سؤالين يمكن قريبين من بعض. في سؤال من محمد البلال: how the lecturer can tie students with him through the lecture. وفي سؤال عن من أمانة بابكر قالت many online learners after a while lose self-motivation which is an essential requirement. What is your advice? خلي ده القريبين من بعض ممكن.
أيوة. فالفكرة عموما إنه لما تعمل asynchronous learning system تدرس الكورس بالطريقة دي، you should not just develop material, put them there and leave it. المسألة بتاعت الماتيريال دي should be thought of as a prerequisite for them to do another activity. فأنا لما نديهم فيديو بكون بديهم فيديو ودايرهم يعني يسمعوا الفيديو and with full attention، لأنه if they miss attention they have the opportunity to go back, rewind and listen again. فبيبقى ما في excuse، ما زي الأونلاين الin person teaching. حتى لما زول كان سرح شوية كده خلاص الموضوع بيكون فاده، هناك الفيديو عندهم ممكن يرجعوا له. لكن إذا بس خدته لهم كفيديو وخدته في يوتيوب ممكن يشوفوه ممكن ما يشوفوه، ممكن حتى لو عندهم الجود انتنشن ممكن يقولوا اوكي انا حاسس لكن ام بيزي، انا بعمل في شنو بعدين، ما هو قاعد انا حشوفه يعني ما حيمشي مني حته. بيقوم يفاجئوا بعد ذاك انه الماتيريال اللي تراكمت عليهم وبقت صعبه جدا انهم تفولو فيها وكده. ف I have to hold them accountable ل certain timetable. فحتى الاسynchronous learning ده هو asynchronous لكن per week، يعني انا بخط لهم كل اسبوع ماتيريال وبتوقع انه في نهايه الاسبوع حيحلوا الكويزز والاساينمنت اللي انا خدتها لهم، وحيقوموا يخشوا في الدiscussion board and ask any question they have I reply to them immediately. فبالطريقه دي بيكون دائما يعني they are on the hook، بنضمن انهم يعني ماشيين in the right progress. اللينك لسؤال اماني very good question. Self motivation, yes, it is in a way linking those targets in a weekly basis, and it will prevent them from getting to the point of completely losing self motivation. يعني we have all been through it. It's again الليلة شغال رسم مع انه خط شين جدا، لكن let me try it again. Again in my mind, in time, الانكزايتي بتاعت الستودنت هو اللي لسه ما عمل حاجه مفروض يعملها بتكون ماشيه زايده لحد ما يعملها، وبتجيه تاني من جديد لان انا بكون نزلت له ماتيريال جديده، وبتكون ماشيه الانكزايتي دي لحد ما يعملها وهكذا. اذا ما عندي ديدلاين I'm not helping them meeting the deadline، اللي بيحصل انه الانكزايتي دي حتزيد وحتطلع، وفي certain level لو وصلته they are disengaged خلاص. There is nothing they can do. بعد ده بيبقوا في إنه and I want to drop the course ولا what can I do to to meet this, I cannot meet it. And فالفكرة عموما إنه ما توصلهم للليفل ده. لازم الديزاين بتاع الكورس يكون adaptive وتكون معاهم متابعهم بحيث إنه دائما to keep them under a certain threshold برضه في الانكزايتي. والماتيريال لازم تكون interesting طبعا برضه عشان to capture capture and captivate them so they are self-motivated برضه يخش في الايكويشن يعني.
طيب ممكن يكون قريب برضه من الموضوع ده سؤال محمد مصطفى عن how do you compare disadvantages and advantages of e-learning compared to direct?
Excellent question. And I'll tell you in a way, about 6 years ago, I started changing the way I'm teaching to a flipped classroom environment. ولقيت صعوبات كثيرة جدا من الطلبة في الحتة دي. Actually they were bimodal. الفليب teaching أساسا هو الفكرة بتاعت إنه I'm starting to record my lecture. I'm asking students to watch the lecture before they come to the classroom. And when we come to the classroom, I'm not teaching them anything new. I might just summarize quickly. Like I'm working with them on the homework assignments and design projects inside the classroom. I divide them into groups. They can work together and so on until they finish. فالفليبد classroom دي the student perception of learning came back to me bimodal completely. Half the class loved it. Half the class hated it. And it goes with this figure that I was highlighting here. الناس المجتهدين لقوا إنه دي أحسن من الطريقة التقليدية بكثير. ليه؟ لأنهم استفادوا من القصة بتاعت إنهم لو سرحوا، لو زول ضرب لهم، لو عندهم مشكلة ما حضروا الليكشر بلا بلا بلا، الحاجات دي كلها بالنسبة لهم ما موجودة لأنه الفيديو قدامهم. بيقوا بيرجعوا ريوايند و many times they see it وكده. فبيقوا لما نيجوا للليكشر بيجوا جاهزين ودارين يسألوا أسئلة ودارين يتعلموا أكتر ودارين كده. فلقوا إنه الليرنينج حقهم زاد بكثير جدا. الناس الجزء الثاني اللي هو البروكراستينيترز، الديل اللي بيكونوا بس ماشيين مع الفلو ودايرين في النهاية كده بس يعني وريني الحاجة الديو حسي شنو أحلها وأخلص ما تتعبني كتير. فديل لقوا إنه الفيديوز موجودة وبتاع، لكن مهما حاولت إنه to enforce how they are watching it فشلت في الموضوع ده. حتى المانجمنت learning management system لما توريني الطالب شاف الفيديو ولا ما شافه بيقوا في النهاية بيفتحوا الفيديو وبيمشوا يعني. فالمسألة بالنسبة لهم قصة إنه يعني أنا ما داير وما عندي وقت وما مهتم whatever it is، ممكن يفتح الفيديو وما يحضره بس عشان المانجمنت ليرنينج سيستم وريني إنه حضر فما أقوم أخذ عليه. لكن زي ديل بيقولوا إنهم في نهاية لما جاء وقت الامتحانات لقوا إنهم ما قادرين يواكبوا مع الامتحان they hated it. In my opinion it is better. The asynchronous learning is better, especially in a flipped classroom environment. مع الكوفيد والديستانس ليرنينج الفليبت سيكشن اللي كان in class discussion اتحول حسي للأونلاين بوردز. فاز لونج از انك انت متابعهم في البوردز دي وبتديهم يعني تتناقش معاهم ونقاش حي وكده you can still achieve the purpose بتاع الفليب كلاس روم environment. In my opinion the flip classroom is the best لكن بيتطلب motivation من الستودنتس نفسهم.
طيب شكرا. آخر سؤال قبل ما نختم من إيهاب، سألت عن are the exams the best way to evaluate students after distance learning؟ يعني traditional exams or you need something new because of the different way?
Yeah, that's a great question لأنه this is what we are dealing with now. يعني الexams مع distance learning kind of difficult in a sense لأنك حتى ما بتقدر تراقبهم زي ما بتراقب الطلبة التانيين. لكن it gets to a point in time when you start questioning يعني the value of exams themselves and especially بالنسبة لنا احنا بندرس زي ما قلت 70% من الكورس grade من الأعمال السنة only 30% من الإكزامز. فهل الإكزامز دي need to be redesigned؟ This is an active and a hot question now مع distance learning والكوفيد 19 worldwide وكده. In my opinion الإكزام should be should be going to a level of testing the student individuality in a way. يعني يمكن مثلا حسي في الكلاس حقي بتاع الجرادويت كلاس ما عندي لهم final exams، عندي لهم individual research paper that every student submit. So by design every student is different، لكن بكون متابع معاه من البداية. يعني سلموني الليترشر ريفيو، سلموني الريسيرش كويشن، سلموني بعد ذاك الديزاين of experiment that you're gonna do، بعد ذاك سلم لي الفيجر والريزلتس، بعد ذاك في النهاية اديني باوربوينت برزنتيشن وريني فيها السؤال اللي انت لقيته شنو من الليترشر that it's a missing, it's a gap in the literature. How did you address it? What were your results? How do you answer your original question? فبقوم بشيل منهم العبء بتاع عندي ساعتين لازم أحل فيها الأسئلة، ولو نسيت، لو تعبان، لو foggy minded I cannot so it's not fair. وفي نفس الوقت I take away from me البيردن بتاع إنه did they cheat, did they not cheat, so they are individual products they are submitting. At the same time, pedagogically speaking, it makes them target the create level of the Bloom's taxonomy. فبيكون عنده big value في إنهم كيف يعني يجيبوا حاجة جديدة. لكن that's mostly in graduate classes, not undergraduate classes. Undergraduate classes, it's still a question and it need to be adjusted.
طيب شكرا. احنا كنا عايزين السيشن دي تعمل ساعة already ساعة وثلث مما بدينا، لأنه بدينا متأخرين 10 دقائق. ممكن بس تسكيز one last question من عندي. السبجكت دي عندكم يعني بتدرسوها؟ دي حاجة بالنسبة للأساتذة اللي بيدرسوا لازم يمروا عليها، ولا دي حاجة عملتوها بس عشان كوفيد؟
دي الماتيريال بتاعت التيتشنج ثيوري والليرنينج ثيوري والسمري بتاعتها I prepared that for this webinar. فما كانت لكن ال reinforcement learning مثلا is an interest for me من ال artificial intelligence و linking it to teaching وكده. السيلابس وال Bloom's taxonomy دي معروفة لكن ما بيدرسوها علينا. You have to go and find it yourself. ما لم تخش لك كورس براك أو workshop براك وكده. It's amazing actually, there are so many يعني related topics and information out there، لكن ما كل الناس
فكرة مفيدة جدا. الموضوع ده مهم خالص. يعني لو كنا أساتذتنا زمان الدوام الكلام ده كنا نطلع الناس أحسن كتير. طيب شكرا. أنا في الختام نشكر الحضور ونشكر منتصر، ويعني فعلا أحسن كثير مما توقعنا. الأسئلة برضو كانت مفيدة جدا، فنرجو أن المستوى رفعت البار too high يا منتصر. لكن that's the standard now. فإن شاء الله يعني نشوف أكثر وأحسن. وشكرا لكم جميعا.
شكرا جزيلا لكم.
شكرا جزيلا.